Hi, I'm Jimmy, and this is a video documenting the making of a niche historical indie puzzle game. If you enjoy watching the creation of a video game about obscure historical references wrapped in puzzles and mysteries, then perhaps this is the place for you. This week we're talking blockouts, aka whiteboxing, aka paper prototyping. Basically, trying to design the layout of our world while investing as little time as possible into sweating the little details. This means we can quickly make incredibly stupid mistakes, poor design choices, and potentially even fix some of them in a short space of time. Via the medium of the first web drawing app we stumbled upon, we began by intensely gazing upon our scrap of digital paper and willing a variety of interesting rooms into existence in the form of a crude map. A fashionable range of irregularly sized and appropriately labelled monochromatic boxes defined our rooms, juxtaposed with a series of vibrant arrows dictating doorway connections betwixt them. Vestibules, sculleries, hallways, and all the rest of your favourite Victorian architectural trappings. Our most important requirement was the immediate adjacency of certain rooms. As the story is mostly linear, all rooms must be accessed in a specific order. Some rooms may need to be reached many times, and other rooms still must remain locked until late in the game. Being able to rapidly change that was important as we iterated across the game's narrative. After great concentration and much room swizzling, partially performed alongside the narrative writing of the game, we deemed the map acceptable and charged ever onwards. Our memory timeline is hopefully a novel way of navigating through the different scenes. Like a simple house cat, you cannot open doors of your own accord, but must instead jump into a different point in time when said door is open, allowing access to the room beyond and potentially unexplored areas to boot. We became immediately concerned that this would be unintuitive, or just a very annoying mechanic for players, so we made a few mock-up rooms to test and see. Jumping into Blender, we used some fancy-schmancy geometry nodes to quickly make adaptable rooms that were hollow with solid walls. Booleans could then be utilised to cut out simple doors and windows, though Blender didn't seem delighted about so many live, simultaneous Boolean operations. Using this system, alongside some primitive gameplay prototyping, we mocked up the whole school to see what navigating around a large space felt like, and checked it worked well with a multitude of rooms and traversing timelines. Our preliminary personal testing has shown it to be tenable to use, and we found there to be something oddly satisfying about navigating this sort of time-dependent labyrinth, though hopefully no minotaurs roam these halls. Of course, we are still deeply biased, and will have to gather feedback from playtesters to really understand if this is viable, or just mildly upsetting for all involved. After hitting limitations in our first choice of web drawing app, we ventured on to the next hit on Google search. Stumbling upon draw.io, we found it just about good enough to construct a top-down schematic of our required scenes. We added simple representations of all characters and items, enabling us to further proof our narrative on paper without having yet to wrestle with that pesky third dimension. This allowed for quick iteration, shuffling characters around the rooms, imagining them mid-action, and getting a real feel for what was going on. It also provided a means for fact-checking our story and puzzles, to ensure they made at least some logical sense. Rich, of course, lamented that we should have kept our north direction consistent between the 3D mockup and the improved 2D map, but I believe performing a simple perpendicular rotational transform in your head each time you need to compare the maps to be a healthy workout for the brain. To reduce scope and improve the amount of time we could spend developing each area, we tried to reuse as many rooms across the story and gameplay. This meant, among other revisions, virtually demolishing a prospective clickroom, and the merging of two separate exterior areas into one multi-purpose yard. The benefit of these downsizing operations, from a player's perspective, is that it becomes a little easier to navigate and recall where important clues may be hidden, without trekking around endlessly. In a similar vein, we made efforts to include enough interconnecting foyer scenes to allow for a relatively painless hub-style traversal, while avoiding having so many instances that flipping through them became a miserable chore. Though again, more playtesting required here to see if we've struck a reasonable balance. Finally, we could begin with some real whiteboxing of the game scenes in the engine. The many variants of each room were exported from Blender and unceremoniously dumped into the project. As we can have up to 7 or 8 variants of some rooms, we decided it was worth the time to fashion a rudimentary prefab system to keep all of our rooms in sync without having to manually run around playing a laborious game of spot the difference. All common items in a room, such as bookcases, beds, and picture frames, are defined by a single file, and each variant of a room loads those in alongside any other unique objects such as characters or key items. Further still, common objects in a room can have their location overridden in specific cases, perhaps allowing an ink pot to be jiggled around across time, or hide a common item completely by barbarically jamming it out of sight underneath the floor. As a quick stopgap to start padding out the world, a single character model was placed everywhere. This was useful at first, but proved to be quite confusing as the scene complexity increased, and we became quite sick of his taunting, moustachioed face. After an embarrassing amount of time, it eventually dawned on us that we could just take the character concepts Richard sketched out and ham-fistedly splat them onto a plane atop their body, and declare our character blockouts complete. Some simple tooling was bodged together, allowing us to define areas a player may walk, and which timelines that area is connected to, letting them quickly jump backwards and forwards in time based on their current location. Room size tends to feel natural and well scaled right until you drop in that first piece of furniture and realize you have actually constructed a large warehouse capable of storing several Category C1 lorries. Therefore, repeated bopping of various rooms was performed to massage them into an appropriate dimension. Using our in-engine blockout, we have been running through the game, one of us commanding the player character while the other furiously takes notes. We have been attempting to test all our puzzles, shaking out the most egregious mistakes, missing information and poor puzzle design, and generally try to toe the line towards making scenes just readable enough to understand the narrative for each character's actions. Perhaps in the not too distant future, these ugly grey walls will be adorned with scintillating textures, colours and dressing to boot. But there's no use, we fear, in slapping on a fresh coat of paint until we've hammered out as many of these dents as possible. Join us next time for a peek behind the curtain of our character creation process. But that is all for now.